Welcome to TruthStream with a man who, for the most part, needs no introduction unless someone's never seen our show or follows this movement. Brad Olsen, wonderful to have you back on. And we're going to go over a plethora of topics this evening. And I know it's middle of the summer here and you've been very busy. So let's kick this off with a little bit of insight into the Sound of Freedom.
Sound of Freedom.
Yeah.
And specifically, there's a lot of truthers talking about how it's somehow a psyop and it's just a deep plot so that the Masons can chip children. And it's substantiated by, there's a photo of, and there's probably more to this than just this is what I've seen. Tim Ballard's wearing a tie with Masonic logos on it. And then later there's a photo with Jim Caviezel wearing a cross that has the smaller crosses in the corners. That's a known Masonic logo or whatever. So that's the predicate. But anyway, what do you think?
Yeah, I just saw it last weekend. I really liked it. I thought it was groundbreaking. Considering how much suppression was put on this film, it took about 5 years to get it released. It got turned down by all the major studios, got turned down by Amazon streaming, Netflix. All the big ones said no. So they had to do this crowdfunding type thing where you had to order your ticket online to prove to the movie theaters there'd be a demand. And then lo and behold, it's the #1 movie on the 4th of July, even beating out the new Indiana Jones movie, showing that there's a lot of demand for this, a lot of anticipation it was coming out. And the fact that it has ruffled so many feathers and there have been so many methods of trying to hold it down. For example, I met Jason Shurka at Conscious Life Expo in February. We were both speakers. And he was one of the executive producers. I saw his name come up in the credits at the end. He just did a quick video about how AMC theaters around the country are hitting the lights or turning off the air conditioning when it's really hot, or turning the sound way down, or making it really cold on a colder day. Things like that, which get people agitated and then don't want to watch a whole movie. So there's these deliberate acts of sabotage, and the fact that now it's being reviewed in magazines such as Rolling Stone. Hey, thanks for showing your cover for the Paydos, because if you see this movie, it is fantastic, so well acted, and a message that absolutely needs to get out, because this does cut to the core of the globalist money stream. And of course, they're going to hit it from every angle and show us who's still on their payroll, like Rolling Stone magazine, willing to do a hit piece. Now we know it's like the 9/11 litmus test. Those who denied that it was an inside job, and it so provably is an inside job, then you know who they are, and they call themselves out. So I think okay, maybe if the guys are wearing Masonic symbol or a pin, yeah, they do have an agenda too, but I think the movie's doing a lot more good than bad.
Me too. But yeah, Carlos Slim apparently did a lot of the financing of this film, and he's generally regarded as a bad guy. He owns the New York Times, and he's always been firmly on the left, which was kind of a surprise to me. But any thoughts there?
Not too aware of the guy. I just know some of the big players, and that it was based on a true story, and showing how many different ways children can be abducted. And once they're in the system, how difficult it is to extract them, and how innocent children are. And love the line from the movie that God's children are not for sale, and nobody needs to suffer like that. This is a prison planet. It's the subtitle of my book, Beyond Esoteric: Escaping Prison Planet, because there are so much evil done on this planet, and it's such a beautiful place. It's not knocking planet Earth at all. Gaia is a beautiful gem of a garden planet. It's this negative force that's implementing everything we are quite upset seeing, this being one of the biggest, because it is such a large money generating industry. As Jim Caviezel said, you can sell a child 5 times a day, but you can only sell 1 bag of cocaine. So it's huge money. It's taking advantage of the most innocent in the most gruesome way. So it absolutely needs to be exposed, and I'm glad it is.
Me too. Yeah, and you know, I've had countless conversations with normies over the last couple of years who think I'm just nuts for identifying this massive problem of child trafficking. So I'm thrilled that now we're having a conversation about it, and you know,
Yeah.
it legitimizes the issue, and you know, we're one step closer to solving the problem. And I was just thinking about how valuable children are, in that, you know, they're kind of the neutralizer for so many different things. I mean, you know, the angriest man can be made to smile by a child. You know, the most ardent racist can look at a child of another race, and it'll melt his heart. You know, it's children are just such a glimpse into what we are and the beauty of what we are. And the hardest part to believe is that there would be a market for exploiting children in this way. But then these evil forces that you're talking about are hell-bent on destroying beauty.
Yeah.
And Tucker Carlson recently had a lot to say about that. You know, that was always the goal of communism. You know, you look at architecture born out of communist countries, and it's abysmal and prison-like, and you know, the artwork is you know, makes you uncomfortable at best. And you know, I think there's really something to that. So yeah, I think the net effect, one way or another, regardless of these observations, seems to be just a real triumph.
Truly.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So what else do we want to talk about? Now, there's some traveling that you've been doing.
Yeah, that's my thing.
It-
On all 7 continents, but still a lot of places to go. Still finding new places right here in America in our own backyard. That's what I think travel's so great for. If you start doing it, you don't even have to go far. As I wrote in my book, Sacred Places North America. In fact, all the Sacred Places guides are evergreen, meaning they never go out of. There's no information that gets outdated, because there's just directions to go to these locations, and 108 destinations in Canada, US, and Hawaii. Every state has them, so you can check out really incredible history, sacred and native sites, and I continue to find new ones. I was just at Captain Jack's Stronghold and Petroglyph Point in Lava Tubes National Monument a couple days ago on my way back from Oregon.
What state was that?
Oregon.
Just
Oregon.
over the border from Oregon, and it is in California,
Nice.
near the town of Tule Lake. And there is still a Tule Lake out there that was the water source. In fact, so much of Tule Lake has been drained off for irrigation. The Petroglyph Point, I was reading the placard for it. The natives would go up to it in a canoe, and that's why the petroglyphs are really high there. And it was a sacred island in Tule Lake. Now it's just barren. There's just a tiny little fraction of the lake left. And that's what supplied the water for the Modoc and the Klamath people to the north of there. And off in the distance, you can see Mount Shasta, which they called the Great White Mountain. And the Modoc were among the last Native Americans to hold out in their homeland. And they had a battle with our U.S. Army, and the highest ranking officer, as a lieutenant general out in the field, was killed in the Modoc Wars. And so Captain Jack and his warriors would just go and hide in all the lava tubes and very sharp lava rock. Unless you knew the trail to get around, it was virtually impregnable by our U.S. Army. So what they finally had to do is catch all the females and children who are running to the lake to get water for the men hiding out. And they cut them off their water supply, and they finally had to surrender. That's how they caught Captain Jack.
Wow. We have a plane going overhead. Go.
Yeah, no, is that spelled Thule? Is it spelled Thule?
No, that's Thule, the German secret society.
I just wondered.
The Germans would pronounce it Thule. This is Tule, like the Thule reeds, and they would make their boats out of the Thule reeds and sail around this great, beautiful desert lake, which was on the other side of the mountain range from Lake Lahontan. So during the last ice age, and this is where I bought my ranch in the southernmost branch of ancient Lake Lahontan. I live now on the lake bed of an extinct ice age lake, and it's very fertile ground. The river flows through here, and the Walker River is also a remnant of Lake Lahontan, as is Pyramid Lake and Carson Sink and Winnemucca Sink. The whole northwestern corner of Nevada, including portions of California and Oregon, where the three states meet, was this massive freshwater lake 1,200 years ago. And get this, up on the high water marks, which you can clearly see in the deepest part of Lake Lahontan where they do Burning Man, are these striations in the hills of all the lake levels. That's about 400 feet lower than I am now. So that was the deep end. Up here it's sort of seasonal. It was kind of maybe a swampy part of the lake. But all around the high water mark are the caves where they found the giants. Giants that lived and canoed and hunted on the shores of Lake Lahontan during the last ice age. And they found their mummified bodies in several locations, the most famous one being Lovelock Cave, just outside the town of Lovelock, Nevada. And they were mummified, much in the same way that Egyptians mummified bodies. And they left so many funerary artifacts weaved out of this Thule reed that they had to name the whole culture the Lovelock culture, because it's so unique, including sandals for size 16 feet. And they were redheaded and red-bearded men, very, very tall stature. And they ate the Paiute Indians. They're still the local native tribe around here. And the Paiute legend passed on to Sarah Winnemucca, who wrote the account of it was called My Life Among the Paiutes. And the living memory story that was passed down about the Paiutes' battle with the giants, and finally getting them all in Lovelock Cave, and then creating an avalanche, and then just burning fires day in, day out to cut off their oxygen, and finally extinguished the last of the giants in historic times, only a few hundred years ago.
Only a few hundred years. Wow.
Perhaps 1,000. I mean, it kind of depends how you interpret Sarah Winnemucca's recording of time, but certainly within generations remembering this account. And then sure enough, people in 1930 were mining bat guano, which is basically excrement from bats, but is very good for fertilizer. Okay. They're digging in the Lovelock Cave, and 15, 20 feet down through the guano, they started finding these mummified bodies in some of the burial sections of Lovelock Cave.
Wow, that's a dirty job. So this is reminding me of a story that I heard about recently, having to do with the Grand Canyon, and the Native American Egyptians settled there in a cave that I guess has been known about by our government, but corned off so that the public couldn't be rattled by this mystery. What do you know about that?
Know a lot about it. I did a 21-day trip down the Grand Canyon. I was just on with Dr. Michael Sala after he interviewed his whistleblower JP, who's special forces and was just on a mission in the caves of Grand Canyon. So I went to just over Marble Canyon on a trip back from Sedona in April, because I wanted to see, one, the landscape again, because that's where we put in 2003 when I rafted down it. But just a little history. So John Wesley Powell was the very first explorer to make it all the way down the Colorado River. It's very treacherous. There's class 5 rapids, very dangerous, and both expeditions lost men. The very next expedition was G.E. Kincaid, which was written about in the Arizona Gazette. And he gives the account of seeing this hole, which is right off of Crystal Creek, not far from the Colorado River at all. That hole has been covered up subsequently because I went by there and I was looking for it. That and the Sipapu, the emergence point of the Hopi Indian up the little Colorado River. But that was a couple miles up and we couldn't do or see either one of them. But I was on the lookout for it. And there are a lot of adobe homes of Native Americans that live in the banks of the Grand Canyon itself. Grand Canyon is super interesting because it's one of the very few places in the world, not only is it over a mile deep, every strata of the different geological ages is represented in the Grand Canyon. So if you want to go look for Tyrannosaurus Rex in the Jurassic period, there's a level in the Grand Canyon. You might find a bone poking out. But what's interesting, it also goes down. It's one of only a very few places on planet Earth that touches the actual black mantle of the Earth with all the sedimentary layers and volcanic layers on top of it.
Wow.
So just to recap on the story of Kincaid, so he went up there, he got in, it was a multi-pronged cave. He even gave a illustration and description. Interestingly, the word Egyptian never came up. He did say Far Eastern quite a bit and described what sounds like a Buddha, but there were mummified bodies. So I think that's where a lot of the Egyptian connotation comes from. Plus tons and tons of artifacts, including in gold. So what I was talking about with Michael Sala, which ties it all together, before the Grand Canyon became the second national park in the country, right after Yosemite, they were mining gold in the Marble Canyon. That's where the Navajo Bridge is. You can still drive over it, and the put in at Lee's Ferry, which was the only crossing point to Arizona for 600 miles in either direction. You just couldn't cross the Colorado, except at this one point. Well, it was showing Michael Sala, there were newspaper articles of gold mining right there in the Marble Canyon. So knowing that the Egyptians and other ancient people absolutely cherished gold and would travel the world for it, there's your incentive for putting this highly advanced civilization in the Grand Canyon, mining their gold, but also leaving behind funerary artifacts, and probably had their own habitation in this cave system. By the way, the cave system's so vast, and JP confirmed this too, that they have let off smoke canisters and found the smoke come up 45 miles away in the town of Kanab at some of the outlets. It's just extensive with many levels and layers too.
So a lot of it's unexplored.
Well, yeah, and top secret. It's in a part of the Grand Canyon that's absolutely forbidden to enter, which is also super interesting. And it's got all these names: the Osiris Needle, the Isis Plateau, the Hathor Butte, names like that all over the place in this forbidden zone.
You know, I've also heard that the Grand Canyon, contrary to popular belief, that it was carved over time by water, that in fact, geologists are agreeing more on the idea that it was created all at once, rather suddenly. Yeah.
I just read a diorama about that.
Yeah.
Give you the quick executive summary.
Yeah.
The diorama said that originally the water of the upper Colorado, which originates in the state of Colorado, had poured down through the southern part of Colorado and then emptied more into New Mexico and then out the Gulf of Mexico. But during the last pole shift or cataclysm, that area rose up in what's now known as the Colorado Plateau, well up over a mile. It's a pretty high elevation, 5,000 and 6,000 feet. So then with the rising plateau and a pre-existing river, it connected to a minor creek, but the cutting power of water over many thousands of years eventually cut through and carved the current course it's on. But for several hundred miles in both directions, it is just one of the deepest chasms on planet Earth, kind of like Olympic Mars on the planet Mars. Huge, deep Grand Canyon on Mars. And we have one here too called the Grand Canyon.
Wow. Yeah, I wonder how the depth compares to the Marianas Trench.
So if my numbers serve me correctly, you could fit Everest in the Mariana Trench.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think it's 32,000 feet deep. Everest is 29,000. Grand Canyon's over a mile deep, which is 5,250 feet. So it's about 7,000 feet deep, not nearly as deep as the Mariana Trench.
Yeah.
Oh, on that topic, the name escapes me right now, but I've heard at the North Pole or in the Arctic Circle, that's where the highest mountain resides. Have you heard anything
I
about
heard
this?
that as well. Yeah,
right?
recently. Yeah.
In the Arctic Ocean.
Yeah, no, the Arctic's, the Arctic, not the Antarctic, but the Arctic, but the North Pole area. That's
Yeah.
where the highest point is
highest
on
peak?
Earth. Highest peak on Earth is in the north, and it's.
But it doesn't poke out of the Arctic Ocean, though, that I know of. There's no landmass in the Arctic Ocean.
No, I just
I
mean
heard the tallest mountain in the world is actually Mauna Kea on Hawaii, because not only is it 14.5 out of the water, but it goes down 20,000 feet. So it's taller than Mount Everest by 4,000 or 5,000 feet, if you count where it starts on the bottom. And the newest Hawaiian island is being formed right now. You can go out there in boats. Sometimes they'll detect an eruption, and bubbling sulfuric water is coming out of the low-high seamount, which is south and east of the Big Island.
It's a huge investment opportunity.
And the Big Island keeps growing because the Kilauea crater keeps erupting and depositing more lava into the sea, creating more land. It's pretty amazing. I went by Krakatoa on the island right off of Java, between Java and Sumatra. Krakatoa, active volcano. You could see it just spewing in the middle of the night. It was very exciting. When that blew, it was a shockwave that was heard in London. It was huge. And not far away from there is the Toba eruption on Sumatra. And when that went off 73,000 years ago, it created a huge blanket, a nuclear winter event that starved almost all the humans on the planet at that point. Only about 34,000 humans lived on the entire planet Earth 73,000 years ago, in the years following the Toba eruption, when things settled down and they could start collecting food again. So there was the threat and fear that an alien species could easily conquer Earth, but Earth was always meant to be a human ruling the surface world. So this is the backstory of the black goo, that the black goo was brought here for benevolent reasons and was stored on South Thule Island, Thule, near Antarctica, because when it's frozen, it's inert and it cannot function. And that is what the whole Falkland Wars was all about. The second prong of the ships went down to capture the South Sandwich Islands, and the surrender papers for the whole Falkland Wars was right off the coast of South Thule Island, where they were working on the black goo. And they took it back to London, and it got loose, and it is now wreaking havoc. It's also been weaponized in the form of Morgellon syndrome, and also now it's weaponized in graphene oxide in the ferrofluids. That's black goo in a modern age. And that's part of my Antarctica presentation. You guys know I went down there about 5 years ago and was looking into this, and it was just so mind-blowing that it was right there. And it's one of the most inaccessible places on planet Earth too.
Now, are we talking the same black goo that was oozing out of Max Spear's orifices and whatnot when they found his body? And I don't know, it was talked a lot about in X-Files. I mean,
movie Prometheus, it's all over. Yeah. For sure. I knew Max Spear's girlfriend, Sarah Adams. She had some insight on that and thought it was a form of the black goo that they can get it in you, injection, spraying, you touch something, it can move fast. And it was used. So it was used after the Toba eruption. In the event, humans needed to be cloned very rapidly. So the black goo, as a form of AI, it has its own sentience and intelligence, but it can rapidly clone just about anything. Isn't it interesting how much we're hearing about clones these days, and how some of our leaders might even be clones? Perhaps they're the product of some of this black goo rapid cloning technique that can create just about any life form. I don't think there are limits to it. It just has to be used properly, but it's gotten into the wrong hands and it's now been weaponized.
And this is it's not native to the planet. It's from an off-world origin, and it has a sentience, right? Like
yeah. just show you our Antarctica map. So the Palmer Peninsula is the northern tip there. Just right up off the map is where South Thule Island is, one of the most remote locations in the world. So according to this person who was working with the Argentinian government and other people who talk about the black goo, including Harold Kotzvela, I've been on interviews with him before, and Miles Johnston at the Bases Project has a couple other speakers who know about the Falkland Wars, what it was really all about. In England, it's a much bigger story because that's where it got out of control. And rightly so, people are kind of pissed. They were told the Falkland Wars was to take back the sheep islands, 1,000 to 1 sheep to humans. It's like, what are you sending your whole armada down there for? Remember that in 1982? It just made no damn sense at all. But now it does, because it was Operation Keyhole to get the black goo.
That's why you don't let a Scotsman develop your military strategy. But so, or an Irishman for that matter.
I think it was Margaret Thatcher was the
and well, now we know the truth about Margaret,
which could have been a Scotsman.
Scotsman. There you go.
So when you say it got out of control, what havoc are we talking about here? What did the black goo do? What did the black goo do?
Well, it's infected mammals in the world. So it was originally released with chemtrails. I believe this is how it got into not only humans, not only people all around the world, but now it's also turning up in animals. And this is truly a 21st century. It's more than a disease, because now that it's gone worldwide, it's actually a phenomenon. And in my book, Beyond Esoteric, I do have a whole chapter on the Morgellon nanobots.
Right.
And I'm a sufferer. I still have it on my hands.
Oh, no
and
kidding.
a few other spots. I've got a new protocol that's actually working pretty good. I hope to say that this will be the one, because I want to do a second edition to Beyond Esoteric and include the Morgellons cure, but I have to find it out myself.
Right.
These things are a bitch, you guys. And I'll put it one step further. I'll let you know that you got it too. And if you want to find out, what you got to do is the red wine test. And that's hold a mouthful of red wine. Don't swallow it for 5 minutes. It's kind of tart and it makes your mouth feel a little gross at the end, but spit it out. And this stuff comes out through the soft tissue in your throat, neck, and cheeks. And you'll see for yourself, you got some artifacts in there. So it really has affected the world. And
wow,
these nanobots, I mean, they're the size of the smart dusts are called too. They have been raining down on humans. So they are terraforming the human race, whether we like it or not, whether we know it or not. That's why I think people need to be informed about what they're doing to us, because it's getting to the point where this is Frankenscience. Here's some of the smart dust. They're about the size of a pin tip. They're so small. And there's some examples of a really extreme Morgellons case. It destroys people's lives. Joni Mitchell, probably the most famous person who had it, she called it the alien fiber. She directly attributed it to something off-world because it behaves like nothing else. So as I've gone to the dermatologist and had to leave because they couldn't do jack shit, they just gave me cream that seemed to make it worse. Then they finally brought in a psychiatrist and said, you have delusional parasitosis and we want to put you on psych meds. And I said, I've never been depressed in a day in my life. Why would I do that? Why won't you just take a sample of this, which I provided, and let's look at it under a microscope? Because I want to know what the hell this is too. They were clueless. They thought it was all in their head, even though I'm offering them absolute proof this exists. Now, you see, I'm in an Rh negative blood type family. My dad's Rh negative blood, so are aunts, uncles, cousins. My mom was Rh positive, so I'm Rh positive, but I could have an Rh negative kid. It is so technically in my family bloodline. And Morgellons targets Rh negative blood type people. Now, they are also the subject of almost all abductions. human abductions, almost all are Rh negative blood type. Why? Because my dad, who's O negi, he is the universal donor. He can give blood to every single person on this planet. But get this, if he gets a donation of anything but his own blood type, it'll kill him.
Wow.
As it killed my uncle Douglas, who was 5 days old upon delivery, it mixed with my grandmother's blood, who was Rh negative, and killed Uncle Douglas at 5 days. It turned his whole body blue because his immune system was trying to fight this off, and it couldn't. Now they do have some cures for it. And my Aunt Diane had a full blood transfusion, became an Rh negi because she was going through the same process. They brought her to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, was one of the first patients, and they saved her life. She had to change blood types, but she was sickly her whole life and has even died prematurely. But it's a weird ass thing, man. And Rh negative blood types are different physically. They can have one extra digit on the end of their spine, like even a little tailbone, sometimes an extra rib, but they're more psychic and they're more attuned. And my cousin and aunt, who are Rh negative, say, oh, absolutely, we've known this our whole lives. So there's something about it. We have two species of humans living simultaneously right now among each other. Hardly anybody even knows this. And by the way, no other animal in the entire zoology catalog, no animals, any, can infect and kill their own offspring like humans did, like my grandma did with Uncle Douglas. No other animals do that, only humans.
Wow. That speaks volumes, really. But you know, these Morgellons fibers, I remember seeing, you know, when they were pulled out and they were looked at under an electron microscope, there's text, there's numbers, letters, there's all kinds of information printed on or that appears on these fibers. You probably know a whole lot more about that than I do, but what any explanation for that? Has there been any more information?
And there's patents for it too.
Really?
So anything that is patent, yeah, here you go. Right there. There's your patent for Morgellons. It's this polymer fiber that was created. Please look it up. All the diseases that they've been pushing on us, including Corona, all have patents. So what does that mean? You cannot patent natural life. You can only patent something that comes out of a laboratory. All this stuff has been created in laboratories. And probably, like Jody Mitchell said, using some kind of alien tech, because these nano just means super ultra small, but they've created these little robots that can self-assemble inside your body. This is when it gets into some pretty scary, not science fiction anymore, but science reality, that this black goo-like substance, and it does come out in a tar-like substance at time with Morgellons, has the properties of self-assembling nanobots. That's what it really is. And it creates these polymers that are as strong as your fingernail. So they're very difficult and painful to get out.
And you've captured these kinds of samples yourself?
Still have them.
Jeez.
On my hand.
That's crazy. So are they subcutaneous or are they in the blood or both?
They're just under the second dermal layer of skin. So they're really hard to get out and they can avoid capture. You know what they're very similar to? Every time somebody has gotten an alien implant, usually in the back part of their neck, and when they have seen them on x-ray, they know they're there. The doctor goes in to get a little pliers and pluck them out. They know they're being hunted and they evade capture. They're very hard to catch. You have to basically freeze them to be able to get a tweezer on them and yank them out.
Oh,
and so I'd say it's in a similar vein of technology that's been done with the implant chips.
So if when the implants are implanted, are those done at a certain stage in life, or what is there a usual time when someone, because a friend of mine just reached out to me and she had this x-ray. She goes, I have an implant. She actually, I can't say who it is.
We'll talk about that.
I'm like, yeah, Scott knows. Anyways, but so when does the implant usually get implanted, if you will?
When people get abducted, typically, They're mostly females. So people who are abducted against their own will, first of all, that's illegal, wrong, immoral, everything you want to put on it goes against our free will. So if someone is abducted against their free will and largely will not remember it because they have a way to swipe your memory of the incident, that is a service to self ET group. So I don't really care what they look like, what their skin has scales or not, or a slit of an eye or multiple appendages. Only two things matter. Are they service to self and do things like abductions against people's will, or are they service to all and are here to help serve humanity in this ascension process, in the great awakening? And I do believe there are both kinds. But so for the ones that are doing the abductions, they're usually women who are fertile and they're being impregnated aboard the ship to create hybrids. And I've talked to many women at conferences. I've even been the moderator on super soldier panels. I'm very well aware of what these people have to go through and some of the programs as well. But basically they'll chip a woman. So when they need to come back in around the 3rd or 4th month, right before she starts getting a baby bulge and maybe not even knowing she is pregnant, they will take her back on the ship and they will extract the living fetus and then grow it in a test tube. And then that becomes the hybrid species. And this is going on planet Earth, has been going on for decades.
This is
So there are hybrids among us now,
Yeah.
but most of them I would say are in underground bases or in orbiting ships.
When you said there's only two things, I thought you were going to say how to kill them and where they at.
Well, only if they're service to self and are the ones that are doing all this harm.
Right.
Yeah, they have to go and they are being extracted. And
So
Alex Collier, a friend of mine, I'm going to be seeing him in his final conference appearance in October in Orlando. We're both speakers. And I've been following him since my formative years, learning about all this stuff. When he was a contactee as a young man, actually as a child, he was first taken aboard. Benevolent ETs who do want to help humanity, that are giving us messages and are very well aware that Earth is falling into the neo-fascist trap, at which point, if AI were to take over, there is no turning back. We will be in the worst form of technocratic fascist control that would make George Orwell roll over in his grave. I like the meme of him saying, I wrote the book 1984 as a warning to humanity, not as a bloody instruction manual.
Yeah.
Which it's turning out to be. The
Yeah.
Ministry of Truth is our mainstream media all over.
So real quick question. So the main reason for the implant, is that to track the person, or is there
Correct.
more that it does than that?
And probably with the technology they have, put the person into a deep sleep, they're able to transition through matter as in a wall. Many abductees who do have the recall will say that they just basically appear and can walk through a wall and disappear. So I think they have a way of either, well, certainly levitating the body. Maybe they got to levitate it out of bed and through an open window, or maybe they can transition that matter through solid walls too, kind of in Star Trek when they would beam each other up. They would go through matter and departicleize and then reparticleize back up there. Although I spoke at a conference in April with Travis Walton, the famous Fire in the Sky, and he continues to give his account, uncritical testimony of what happened to him. And it was a service to self ETs. He was very traumatized by it. He did not want to go up. It was painful. They probed the hell out of him and probably used him as a succubus, taking sperm samples. Big, tall, strapping, good-looking guy. Maybe they wanted it from men, but more often than men are women who are fertile age, who they want to raise a fetus for a couple months before they take it out. So the implants, Joe, are primarily just to put that person to sleep, perhaps swipe their memory, make it so they can never really escape. It doesn't matter where you're going to go on planet Earth where they can't find you and take you when they need you. So this is what people need to know about abductions. And I do have a whole chapter on abductions and cattle mutilations and future esoteric which gets into a lot of this ET type material I've been speaking about.
Yeah, I think I can't remember if Laura told me. I think I've heard it in a couple of different places that the abductions were the permission was granted for a lot of these aliens to do their abductions in exchange for technology. Have you heard the same?
Yeah. Well, not the people themselves, but their government sold them out.
Right. That's what I
The
mean.
government said, yes, you can take a limited amount. We want the names and addresses. Of course, none of that was provided. That just opened the door for letting them act as they wish. But there are bases, I call them legacy bases, very old ET bases on planet Earth. I can name a couple of them right off. Just here in North America, you have some in the Aleutian Islands in Alaska, some base in the Solomon Islands. In North America, you have under Mount Shasta, good ones, bad ones, and government ones, as well as in Sedona, Arizona. Tom Dongo at this April conference was remote viewing, one of the top remote viewers in the country. He said there's 5 bases in this in the Verde Valley where Sedona is. And I said, are they good guys, good ETs, bad ETs, or military? He said all 3, all the above. That's also true with Shasta. Now, the one in Dulce, New Mexico, under the Archuleta Mesa, that's the most infamous of all, and that's the oldest of all. And Anthony Sanchez's book, UFO Highway, he describes how the cavalry, our own mounted cavalry in the 19th century, was exploring around the Archuleta Mesa and found the cave entrance into this legacy ET reptilian base, which I think is also used for hybrid work. It's multi-levels down now, with some of our government is involved in it too. But they found the cave entrance, and at the cave entrance were all these bones of Apache and other warriors who tried to fight their way in the cave, but were just annihilated. And their bones littered the cave entrance. So, wow. Yeah, try to penetrate some of these. They have very, very sophisticated ways of monitoring it. This is what happened to Phil Schneider. He even showed in his last presentations, he held up his fingers got burned off by some kind of laser, and then he opened his shirt. He had a deep cavity and scars all over. He said he was one of the only survivors of the first Dulce War, where we lost dozens of our special forces, killed a couple aliens. Even Phil Schneider said he popped a cap in one of their big heads. He lived to tell about it, but not for long, because he was showing alien artifacts too at his presentations. And when he was suicided in Wilsonville, Oregon, just outside of Portland, how do you tie a catheter around your neck so tight and knot it that you suffocate yourself? And so the official cause of death was suicide. They didn't take any of his valuables, didn't take his gold, his money, his Rolex watch. All they took were the alien artifacts that he was showing at the conferences.
Yeah, it's kind of obvious.
Did he have information about the Clintons? It sounds familiar. It sounds real familiar to me.
There is a commonality there. That's true.
Brad, I just want to, how, so, we talked about a little bit before the show about, maybe getting into Project Bluebeam, et cetera.
Oh, yeah.
But so how do you see, because, I'm still, doing this show about a year now, literally, and I'm still, learning this stuff, and not that I don't believe it, but, I haven't, seen a lot of it yet. Very open to it. How do you awaken to humanity that this is actually our reality? Like, how do you see this unfolding?
Or is it better that we don't? Because I'm beginning to think it's better that we don't.
This is
maybe ignorance is bliss, but I've always believed in following the story wherever it takes you. That's one of the jobs of a journalist, is just wherever it's going to take you, even down the deepest rabbit hole, the darkest space you can imagine. As I've said, I've never been depressed a day in my life, so I can handle the truth. I want to know the truth. I want to know why we're not living in a utopia planet. Why is this still a prison planet?
Right.
Who's responsible for this? And like Bill Cooper said in his famous 1989 speech, you put the aliens in the middle of this stuff and you get all the answers. And you really do, because it is an ET issue. There are exopolitics at play on planet Earth. you better believe there are multiple agendas happening simultaneously. Some of these agendas are so powerful that the entire existence of some of the races that are being hybrid, purposefully bred right now, their entire existence depends on what happens in the near future on this timeline. So, for example, a giant explosion / earthquake happened at Dulce, New Mexico, and it caved in a half a mile and collapsed all those layers where the nightmare hall is, where they're doing these horrendous experiments on humans and hybridization. If that was all ruined in a nighttime, there would be entire hybrid species in our future that will not exist. And this is what Dan Burish, one of Carrie Cassidy's whistleblowers, was working with these gray ETs. Said, where are you guys from? Thinking they're going to say some off-planet location. We're from planet Earth. In your future, 3,200 years from now, we are a dominant species on this planet, and we were doing our hybridization acts. In fact, this ET was captured coming back to ensure that their timeline exists, that their agenda will go forward. So the stakes are extraordinarily high in all this. And I find it an absolute honor and privilege that I've been able to speak at conferences for over a decade and meet all the people, all the thought shapers and researchers and whistleblowers who are endeavoring in this enterprise of understanding this, of unpacking. You put the aliens in the middle of this stuff and you get all the answers. And when you do start to get all the answers, boy, it's just one big onion with layer upon layer upon layer. And of course, our government's involved because they're backward engineering the craft, have been doing so since the Vril Society 100 years ago. It's been known we've been backward engineering the craft. Where do you think the Nazis got so sophisticated with their technology so fast? And I go into the Vril Society, the Thule Society, and the Anomalies Society, which was them, the Nazis, looking for artifacts all around the world to make their army invincible. And they almost got away with it. And they did have the Spear of Destiny, which is said to have made its way down to Antarctica.
No kidding. Seems like there's a lot of artifacts there. Joe was telling me he heard there's an entire marketplace, like galactic marketplace, taking place under the ice in Antarctica. Have you heard anything like that?
Well, there is. There are whole cities. There are whole bases. I do a 90-minute presentation at a lot of conferences called the Hidden Anomalies of Antarctica. And I have to explain first the geophysical properties of the continent. Yes, it's a big frozen 5th largest continent of the world, but it's also the most volcanically active. So when you have all that geothermal activity, the propensity for large under ice domes, which wouldn't even be that cold because you're not out in the elements, you have geothermal heat. You could probably live there in a t-shirt year round. So there's the propensity for a lot of these, not only humans, boy, if you wanted to go escape somewhere. Remember last season, Antarctica season are opposite ours. Right now, they're in the middle of winter. But 2 seasons ago, there was talk of Carl Schwab and Christine Lagarde from the EU Central Bank going to none other than Rothschild Island.
Yeah.
And Michael Sala and I become good colleague and friends. And when I was going down there, I said, he does a lot of research on Antarctica too, which I look into in the Palmer Peninsula, Dr. Sala. He said, try to get down to Rothschild Island. And they have a HAARP array down there that can affect weather globally. Dabu 7 had a video 2 years before I went down there. So it'd have been about 7 years ago when those big fires in Greece were just exploding up out of nowhere, right? Burning huge parts of that country. Dabu 7 had a video of these frequency waves that came right out of Rothschild Island, up and around the world, and terminated in Greece, right at the time those fires were raging. So they have that power. They have that technological ability. That's why this problem, this dilemma, this Earth's dilemma is so difficult to unravel because there's so many players. And when you're a Rothschild, you have all the money in the world. They even have their own secret space program, this corporate conglomerate that is out there doing their own thing and doing this trade. And the human trafficking goes beyond planet Earth. You want to have a sequel to Sound of Freedom? Well, a lot of these super soldiers, whistleblowers, getting their memories back, say absolutely there's humans being traded off planet and likely never ever to come back.
Like through
This-
portals, through
No, they can physically move them. Okay, so then there are the jump rooms. You guys probably familiar with that. I do describe them in Future Esoteric. One of them is right next to LAX airport. I've gotten as close as you can get. They'll shoo you out of the, even driving into the parking lot, let alone trying to film. Frank
No
Jacob, he
kidding.
got as close as you can. And they pulled his film, and fortunately he had a backup and put it in his Packing for Mars.
your
So
typical-
in Frank Jacobs' movie and in other testimony, they have what are known as the jump rooms. This is what Andrew Basaggio and Project Pegasus
We've
met
had
him at conferences too, and one-on-one, and his story has never changed.
Yeah.
As a child, he was, and they like to use prepubescent boys for whatever reason. They just go through, and they can go through time. So Andrew Basaggio says he's the boy in the foreground of the Gettysburg Address picture, right when Lincoln is sitting down. It's really hard to find Lincoln in that picture, but there's old little Andrew Basaggio wearing all this baggy uniform that he said he basically comes through naked or just wearing underwear, but barefoot. And he had to put on clothes of a dead Union soldier to walk over to Gettysburg. And in each case, he has a message to deliver. Now, get this. This is Andrew Basaggio. He went back in time to meet with General Washington. The first one he met was Hamilton, who introduced him to General Washington in his tent as this curious little boy has a message for you, General. And he said, it's Christmas Eve. You have to mobilize the men and cross the Delaware tonight. They did. Had they not, they would have been sabotaged. The Revolutionary War would have ended on Christmas Day the next day. They, in turn, turned it on the British and sabotaged them on Christmas Day, and that turned the tide of the war. So if you think about it, if there are these moments in history that are so utterly pivotal, and our CIA and other secret programs are very, very interested to see history go in the way they want it to, just like the ETs coming back to this age to make sure their timeline exists. We were doing the same darn thing with Project Pegasus, according to Andrew Basaggio.
And we all owe a big thank you to Andrew Basaggio, apparently, because
Yeah.
things would have taken a different turn.
Well, I do want to let people know we did interview him on interview number 116, and he talks about some
it's
of
a
it.
great
cool.
interview.
Yeah,
You'll want to check
I'll
that
put
out.
that, but anyway, go ahead. I
It's
just
fun.
want to let people know.
Oh no, I want to backtrack just a little bit
Please.
because we were talking about the phenomenon from Antarctica, and there's a fellow. Forgive me for not remembering his name. I really want to get this guy on the show. He's interesting, but he was an employee for Raytheon. He was working up there as a fireman. Yeah, you can
Yeah,
it
I'll
up.
look it up.
And or not as a fireman, as a well, he was a security element dealing with fire, but it gave him access to the facility. And he came out with a press conference to let everyone know that Raytheon had developed a weapon, and he was describing this weapon. It sounded completely unrivaled by anything you've ever heard of, and that the first day that they fired this thing up, the earthquakes happened in not Turkey, but
Christchurch, New Zealand.
Christchurch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was Eric Hecker. I know him.
Right,
We've met at
okay.
a conference too. And
yeah.
he's a colleague of mine that spent a year and one day at South Pole Amundsen Scott Station. And we've talked about this too. Yeah. So he was saying that they have a version of HARP that can trigger earthquakes, and it got out of control, and that hit Christchurch, New Zealand. He was speaking at Dr. Stephen Greer's second disclosure in the press corps in Washington, D.C., in the D.C. Press Club.
Is that the same facility that you were referring to when you said they have near Rothschild Island, the HARP facility, or is this a different?
That would be a different location. So where Eric was stationed was South Pole. He does not believe there's a hole under the ice, which is probably 30, 40 miles away. It's nothing you'd see. It's nothing they would advertise. It would be kind of like saying, oh, just over that mountain range is a HARP facility, but you can't even get up to the mountain range to go over it and look at it. Does that make it not exist?
Right.
Because Admiral Byrd said it exists, and the second trip over the North Pole or South Pole, he flew into it in his diary, gave an account going to this inner Earth environment, which I'm going to write about in my next book. And I'm going down to Fort Lauderdale in 2 weeks to film Mysterious Antarctica with Billy Carson's production company,
Nice.
Forbidden Knowledge. Yeah, we're doing an 8-episode series. I've already written the script for it, and the script's going to be in my next book called Esoteric Antarctica. So continuing the series, but then all the wild and wonderful stuff about Antarctica, and the maps before it was discovered are really fascinating, like the Piri Reis map. And even Hugh Newman, a colleague of mine who talks about the giants, told me at Contacting the Desert, he said, "Hey, Brad, you got to put in the Patagonian giants in there too, because some of the tallest, here you go, and more giants in South America, very white looking people who lived in some of the most inhospitable land of the world, Southern Patagonia, southern tip of South America, and Terra del Fuego, could be remnants of humans once living in Antarctica, because there is talk that, and even some evidence Michael Shala shared with me, of some very symmetrical area of Antarctica that looks like it was buildings. So we may finally find foundations. Not only that, but then there's the 3 motherships that are said to exist down there and have been known about since the 70s. The NSA, the No Such Agency, they operate out of South America. They have a building at McMurdo that's unmarked, and it's an NSA building. Everybody knows about it, but nobody knows what they do in there. And they nicknamed the 3 ships in Antarctica Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. And I could say I'm pretty confident I know where one of those is, and it happens to be in the New Schwabenland area claimed by the Germans. So right on the top there on my map, I marked it in red.
Oh, yeah.
Schwabenland. And the Conan base is in 2013. You can go in the Wayback Machine of Google Earth and see they were doing this excavation of some kind of giant machine. So the Farsight Institute, they targeted it and sent their remote viewers there. And they said, oh yeah, that's a big, big machine under the ice. It's got this giant grill that goes for about a quarter mile. In 2013, you can see an airstrip there and snowmobile tracks and something orange, maybe something metallic, like the way metal rust is scattered all around, something orange on the white ice sheet. And that's at the Conan base, which is, so get this, you guys, I'm poring over maps right before I go down there 5 years ago. I love maps. I draw maps. I read maps all the time. And I'm going over these maps of the Cold War era. And guess what? There are the map of West Germany still in New Schwabenland. After the Nazis, the Germans never left.
Right.
They're still there to this day in New Schwabenland. So that kind of blew me away that, yeah, they're there and they found something under the ice and they claimed this big area of land. And that'll be all a whole chapter in my Esoteric Antarctica book.
Well, you had mentioned the movie Prometheus. Isn't the predicate for Prometheus the motherships that you're talking about being under the ice, being discovered?
Right.
Yeah.
And the black goo is in Prometheus too.
Very much so, yeah. Like right at the beginning when they crack it open and
Yep.
he drinks it and falls into the river and yeah. And then later when they're exploring the ship.
It's all predictive programming, guys.
Well, there's
right
an
there in our
extended
face. We just have to interpret it.
Yeah, they cut a lot of scenes out of that movie, apparently, that would have given it a whole lot more storyline to go on. I mean, they basically exposed a lot of things, and then somehow it ended up on the cutting room floor, unfortunately. But
well, I think that goes along with, Scott and I have talked about this, that the JFK files and Trump, he was told that he needs to release them, and Trump said that, no, he can't. So I think there's certain things with disclosure that are too, maybe humanity's not quite ready for it.
That's a perfect one to run past Brad.
Well, that's why I brought it up.
Yeah, no, it's a great idea. I bring this up, kind of becoming routinely, but
yeah. Well, we don't have an answer yet.
No,
so
yeah.
well,
so apparently there was a conversation between Judge Napolitano and Trump, and Trump had already agreed to release an unredacted Kennedy file that would reveal everything about the assassination. The time ran out. It was just time to do it. And last minute, Trump said he can't release the file, not in its entirety. And Napolitano got really kind of irate about it. They didn't speak for a long time, I guess, after this argument. But he said, you have to release it. And Trump said, if you knew what was in that file, because he had just recently seen it, he said, you would understand I can't release it. Now,
Right.
what the hell is in that file? I mean, I know it's probably related to the UFO file, but that's a big topic. What do you think Trump couldn't release? An advocate for disclosing this stuff.
Well, just remember that Kennedy was going to completely change course, pull all of our advisors out of Vietnam War. That would have never happened. So he made a big enemy with the military industrial complex. Plus, he wanted to ally with the Russians in missions of peace, like our Star Trek future is prophesized, working together with all humans on the world to go out in peace and explore the planet. That's the whole premise of Star Trek. And they wouldn't have it. So I think it's partly due to, it's also included in why the CIA was involved in assassinating our 35th president.
Oh, sure. Well, that part did come out. We know that they were involved. We know that George Bush Sr. was there.
Yeah.
That even though
Couldn't remember though where he was that day.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though there's a picture of him in front of the book depository
Exactly.
building.
Yeah, there's so many holes in the story. It's not even funny. But it seems like the biggest thing was the threat to end the CIA.
Yeah.
And so I think that's when we figured out the CIA runs things pretty much. I mean, they took a shot at Reagan, and he became very compliant very quickly after that event, I think. So,
and remember, he told his brother Bobby, who was Attorney General after the Bay of Pigs fiasco, that he wanted to break up the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the wind.
exactly.
So the CIA knew that if Kennedy got a second term, and he would have won easily, handedly.
Oh yeah.
And he was going to dump Johnson too. That's the other thing. Johnson knew that his days were numbered, and he was dirty as hell. He was, oh man, one of the worst presidents who's never been called out for being as terrible and corrupt as he was. So he knew he'd be exposed. In fact, Time Magazine was going to run a hit piece. Well, not even really a hit piece, just telling the truth about Johnson, and was going to give a Kennedy a really good reason to drop him from the ticket the following week after Dealey Plaza. So he, of course, had a role in it. So did J. Edgar Hoover, the cross-dressing homophobe, also played a role. And some of their mistresses, the mistress of Johnson, remembers the night before the assassination, him coming back to have sex with his mistress and saying, "Those Kennedy brothers are never going to mess with me again." Sure enough, he was right. And he did not want the governor to be in the same car with Kennedy, who did get shot. He was trying to put someone else in there because he liked that governor. But the arrangement was already set and he couldn't do it. So there's all sorts of evidence that Johnson was in on it too. And Bush, who was not CIA director yet, but was certainly part of the CIA. And they were already doing their drug running through Zapata oil off of platforms in the Caribbean where they did not have to go through customs. So the CIA has been in the illicit drug and human trafficking business for a long, long time. No wonder why the Mockingbird media, who's still controlled by the CIA, that was even the name of their program, called Operation Mockingbird, to infiltrate all the mass media outlets to plug their version of the story, their narrative. It was William Colby in the 1981 briefing with Ronald Reagan, first time he meets the CIA director, and he says, "We will know our disinformation campaigns are successful when everything the American people believe is false." I mean, who thinks that way?
Right there.
But that's what they've been doing to us. It's just been one big mind fuck for decades.
Yeah.
Just sick of it. And this is who I'm calling out in this expose of why do we live on a prison planet? Well, we got demonic people in positions of power. Do you know that psychopaths are statistically only 1 in 10,000? But in Wall Street, to become millionaires, to get your FU money, it's 1 in 1,000. So psychopaths are attracted to power, including in politics. Then when they honeypot them like Epstein Island and have blackmail on them, yeah, well, they'll do it anyways because they're psychopaths. But if they're good men, then they get blackmailed and go along with their bidding anyways. That's how our government became a captured operation to these same secret society type forces like the CIA, which here's another one for you. the CIA was just formed right after World War II. It was with a lot of help from the paperclip Nazis that came over here. It was modeled in the same way of the SS, of being a secret society. That's why they call it the company. Once you're in the company, you never defect. And they keep that loyalty oath that the SS kept. And once you're a company man, you're always a company man. Just like in the SS, I got a picture of Werner von Braun in Future Esoteric here. One of the very few photos of him wearing his SS uniform right behind Heinrich Himmler. That is Werner von Braun right there, wearing an SS uniform with the double S's on the lapel. Once an SS man, always an SS man. That's why all these paperclip Nazis, they were still loyal to the Fourth Reich. Hitler did not die in the bunker. A doppelganger did. He popped up in South America. I went to locations in South America before I went to Antarctica 5 years ago. Did a tour of the Eden Hotel in La Falda, Argentina. It's like this barbarian hill town. And I asked the guy, "You really think Hitler lived?" He goes, "Oh, I know he did. There's a woman here in town. She was a chambermaid, 19 years old. She remembers Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun, even their dog Blondie came off submarine and came up here. They were their friends, so they gave them shelter." And he had houses all over South America. And in fact, there's a whole History Channel show called Hunting Hitler that went for 3 seasons. So about 36 episodes. And I went to half a dozen of these locations, not only in South America, but many in Europe. Man, they had help from the Vatican, the rat lines, getting all these paperclip Nazis out, some of the worst ones. So I'm reading my Lonely Planet going through Bolivia, and we're going through this log mining town. And Lonely Planet's kind of like the mainstream travel guide, right? If they talk about it, it's sanitized news by then. But they do bring up things, sometimes UFO abduction sites or paranormal hotspots. But in this case, we're going through this small Bolivian town and says, oh yeah, and then there's the cabin where Klaus Barbie, the butcher of Lyon, lived out his natural life with an alias. So these guys got away with all these crimes against humanity and lived out their lives in South America. The only one that got caught was Adolf Eichmann by the Mossad, taken to Israel, tried and hung for his crimes. But 1 of 1,000 is all that got caught.
There was a tranche of CIA documents that were declassified not too long ago that confirmed that, at least according to the CIA, Adolf Hitler was alive through 1955, or he was still alive at that point. But going back to the CIA, prior to becoming the CIA in 1947, they were the OSS.
That's right.
SS, OSS, I don't know. Just
interesting. Yeah.
Point, but they moved a lot of Nazis in.
Oh yeah.
Everyone knows about paperclip and Argentina and South America and so on, but a whole mess of them came here in the United States.
Oh, and they stayed in the EU too. So yeah. NATO was all founded on Nazis. So there was the head of NATO was a former chief of staff for the Third Reich. So why do you think NATO wants to back Ukraine so bad? You've already seen emblems of the black sun, of the swastika, of all sorts of Nazi insignias. They're still alive and well. They never went away. They just went underground. They became a third force operating out of these big land holdings. This is another really interesting thing I found when I was down there. They own huge portions of land in Chile, Argentina, and Brazil that effectively are their own little micronations. And this is where they operated. This is where they took out all their hardware when they were working on backward engineering UFO technology. They had just started to fly the Hanibu craft on February 14th in the Skoda Works, which is now Czech Republic. They got these things off the ground. They flew them around, but they just weren't advanced enough to use them for combat. That is, not until 2 years later during the Battle of High Jump in Antarctica. And I can't confirm if those craft were the German, as Admiral Byrd called them, Flugerads, or they could have been reptilian craft who the Nazis were allied with, their ET group, which is very much a notorious service to self group. We were very, very close to losing World War II. No, I know Laura Eisenhower very well personally. We're working on her first book will come out. And by the way, you can pre-order it on Amazon and any other bookstore. So it is available. She should have said so.
Oh, she's great.
Well, you did when you said
But
February 14th, what year were you referring to?
So get this. This is breaking news that she's going to cover in Awakening the Truth Frequency. That according to Dan Cooper, whistleblower, and what she remembers and was told in her family, Eisenhower got a really bad rap. And still to this day, a lot of people are blaming him for making these treaties with the Greys, the Greada Treaty, which passes on every 10 years, has to be renewed. Eisenhower inherited a mess, just like Trump did, and probably felt the same way, that he can't possibly release this to the American people. Is this so mind-blowing? But do you remember the flyover of Washington, D.C. in 1952? Well, if you don't, I'll show you.
There's like
Oh, yeah.
6 crafts or
Reminder.
something above the White House.
Yeah.
Yep. And for a long time, everybody thought those were, extraterrestrials buzzing the Capitol building on July 19th, 1952. So this was at the waning period of the Truman administration. A lot of UFOologists will agree with me now. They weren't extraterrestrial at all. Those were the Antarctica honeyboo craft that Admiral Byrd said to a reporter in the El Mercurio newspaper right after high jump, that we would be facing an enemy that could fly pole to pole at incredible speeds.
Right.
And now here they are 5 years after the Battle of High Jump, buzzing the Capitol, forcing Truman surrender notice. We surrendered to the Fourth Reich shortly thereafter. Eisenhower inherited everything. And he even threatened, when denied access to Area 51, that he was going to march his first army from World War II, assemble them together, and march into Area 51 if they didn't give him access. They worked out a deal that never happened, but it just goes to show that the military-industrial complex, which he warned us about in his farewell speech, was happening in his administration, and he felt it had already gotten out of control and out of his hand and control.
God, that clears up so
Oh
much.
my God.
That's an
What a
important,
mind-blowing
that's
show.
an important piece of information for sure. So
And
that,
a
you know,
very important piece of our history.
so here we have a situation. I know we're coming up close to the end, but I got to ask you regarding Blue Beam.
We go a little
because-
longer with
Well,
Brad.
of
I mean,
course.
come on.
Well, I'll go for several more hours if you want me to. I mean, I'm like a kid in a candy store.
I know.
but-
This is my
but-
Go ahead.
But so I mean, a lot of people are saying, yeah, they're prepping the narrative for Blue Beam. We're gonna have I mean, when they come out and start talking about UFOs or UAPs, now they're calling them, which is such a jerk off.
What? I
term.
haven't heard.
Yeah,
What's that mean?
it's Lou Elizondo bullshit. I don't know. That guy is such a fraud. Yeah, they got all these
he
CIA
is.
guys talking about being abductees and experiencers, and it's all horse shit led by the government. But now we find ourselves in the situation where a lady just saw a reptile on the plane, another guy saw one on a UK flight. People are seeing UFOs so commonly they don't even bother to take pictures anymore. What's going on, what to expect, and I mean, I think there's probably real aliens among us, but what are we going to see, do you think, in your estimation, given your knowledge of the history and everything that's led up to this point?
Great question.
Yeah, great question. And of course, everybody's got their own cell phone now, so they can do the home videos and upload them to YouTube or TikTok. So way more footage is now being created than ever before. Every day is more and more footage, right? It's just that many more people have phones and can film. What I find more interesting, though, is now the mainstream media is finally finding interest in the subject, which I consider the most important subject any of us could endeavor to learn about. A month and a half ago, Lester Hoyt's on NBC Nightly News saying, well, according to a report by the Pentagon, there's a mothership in our solar system.
Yes.
And then it was a one and done. How is this not the biggest news story in the history of news stories? How come we're still not talking about it? So they're prepping us for something.
Yeah.
And I do go into the whole detail of Project Bluebeam in here, and I'm glad you guys brought it up. And I think people need to be made very well aware that they have the technology to do a hologram show in the sky. Look, Tupac Shakur and Michael Jackson go on tour as holograms, and it looked absolutely real. You can see the videos on YouTube of doing holographic displays in shopping malls and baseball stadiums with a dragon flying around and stuff. They can make it look very realistic. But according to Randy Kramer, Secret Space Program whistleblower, he's an advocate for Project Bluebeam, saying the military wants to do this because they have no other way to roll out all the technology that they have built upon, so that they could roll out and do the sky show, and it would be half real, and there probably would be collateral damage. It would be the biggest thing anybody could ever remember. We'd all be in our backyards, just whoa, kaboom. And Randy Kramer says the insectoids have volunteered to be the invading species, and they would die. So how realistic would that be? We're all watching the show with you guys at the Airstream right there, and a big reptoid arm comes falling down into the yard.
Laying on the
I
ground.
think that'd be pretty believable. But it was always said that this would be the precursor to the New World Order. Even Werner von Braun, who on his deathbed had a change of heart and called it out with his assistant, Carol Rosen, who goes around to conferences and recounts his story, says, Carol, the last card they will play is the fake alien invasion. Then they will implement the New World Order, which we see happening right before our eyes. It's not just world government, which is ostensibly the UN is acting in that regard. They want to issue a one world currency. What do we see rolling out this month or next month? Fed Now, the Fed coin, CBDC. And according to Leo Zagami in his book, Last Pope, they are rolling out the one world religion, and they're already trying out Chrislam. Oh yeah, we're going to blend Christianity and Islam. What do you say, guys? You want to go? Let's go next Sunday. Let's go to Chrislam.
Do they have a Baphomet?
Just idiots.
Do they have a Baphomet? I'll bet they do.
I bet they do. Yeah, they sure do. So yeah, you guys need to get Leo on the show, and Michael Jaco's new book, Awakening the Warrior. I publish all three of them with Laura Eisenhower, and I only publish books that I really think are going to make a big impact, that are really important works, that are very well written, and we put together information that you really can't get on the internet. See, that's what's kept the book trade alive, is if you can present information, a more detailed account of things we're talking about here tonight in book form, and people want more information, more detail, they got to buy the book. And that's just the way it is, because you can get so much more information on the printed page. And fortunately, you can't censor this. It's hard copy.
Right.
And I'm not corruptible with my company, and I own it 100%. And I only do this in service to all, for humanity, because people need to know this information. This is how we break the bonds of Prison Planet. Knowledge is power, and the revolution is knowledge, is us waking up. If we can do this in our lifetime, then we can be on this path to a utopian planet and break the bonds of this prison planet.
It's so awesome to have you on our show.
I look forward to this all the time.
Oh, you guys are great too, man.
Well,
I was just hanging out by the RV, having a talk, a couple beers and a fire.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, if for the audience, if you can't tell, we love Brad, and we love the folks that he represents. They've been guests on the show, and some of our best interviews. And you got to get your hands on some of these books. Brad, where can they find them?
So yeah, if you want to get any books referring to except Laura's, it's not out yet, but cccpublishing.com, you can pre-order it. By the way.
Yeah.
Michael Jaco's next book is coming out October 1st. That just got approved with the proofs at the printer. It's coming through the pipeline real soon. It's a great book. I assembled all the maps, the images, and captions to his already incredible book. The guy has absolute total recall on his past lives, giving little details of famous wars that we all know. So the headline I wrote for the back cover copy is "History Comes Alive." You're reading it like you're there with him during the Spartan Wars when these 300 warriors fought off the Persian army, and riding alongside King Ramses II of Egypt. It's just so fascinating account. I think it's going to be a really widely regarded. It's a great book.
That
And
is
of course, he
amazing.
is
also go by the
intuitive
name
warrior as well.
Does he also go by the name Gene Decode? No, I'm
I
kidding.
know Gene Decode.
No,
but,
Gene can recollect all of his past lives too. Is why
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I mentioned, we talked about it on the show, but
I can recall a half a dozen or so,
yeah,
largely through traveling around the world and just getting goosebumps when I've been to places that I spend a lot of time.
yeah. I think a lot more of that is coming back and becoming
Yeah.
available to a lot of us. More folks that I talk about, they're really starting to remember. And I had a kind of a message a few years back that would happen, and a number of other things, and they're all happening. So it's pretty exciting. I mean, what a time to be alive.
Wow. The best.
Yeah.
I think we all volunteered for this mission, you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A hand went up, said, "Who wants to help save planet Earth?" We got 1 or 2 generations of us to go down there and do it.
What were we thinking?
What were we thinking? What did I get into? I'll never escape this prison planet. No,
You
I
didn't
think
tell
we're
us
gonna
about
all meet
Biden.
at the big galactic dance in the sky when this is all said and done, and just say, "Wow, just like now, what a time to be alive."
Oh, yeah.
And look, we're all in the prime of our lives right now, where we're able to affect and do things and create published books and have these talk shows where the internet just became available and we can use it for so many different things. It's amazing time to be alive. And it's the Great Awakening. We're watching it in real time. More and more people are waking up. Alternative media is now surpassing views from the mainstream media. I mean, this is the information that people want and need. So I'm just happy for my part to do what I can to assist in this Great Awakening.
Well, I'm so glad we met, you in person about 2 years ago, and Laura and Alex and, and Jaco. And it's just that it actually, because it was cool when we decided to actually do this, we could reach out to people and, and just start going, wait a second, we met him, we met her. And so the timing's really been because we were reluctant, but man, what makes it fun and easy and spectacular is having conversations with you and so many of the guests. It's just we never really thought we'd be doing this, but it's amazing.
Yeah, no, I mean, admittedly, this is less about waking people up to the truth for me and a lot more just indulging in these amazing conversations with some of the most interesting people I could hope to meet. I love it. I love it. And
well,
I
it also
feels the same.
and also helps Scott actually realize, because when I get to sit here like a kid in the candy store going, wait a second, this is the stuff that Scott's talked about for a while and what you've studied for many years, and well, he studied too, but doing books, it blows my mind, because I think what I bring to it is this almost a naivety, and not that I don't believe it, but now I'm starting to, and I think through people watching me, they're like, okay, well, this is new to him too. So hopefully it brings that to the table, because it still blows my mind every time I hear about it.
Yeah, and Joe has a sense of linear time that I lack, so that's helpful as well. But anyway,
so real quick, where can people find more about you? And we'll end with a really positive note for everybody, so please go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, well, if you want to meet up with me at one of the conferences I speak at, I still got a couple more this year. bradolsen.com, click on the conferences link, already lining up some for next year. And the next one I'll be at is the big 5D alien event in Biomed down in Vegas, middle of September. Then I'm shooting right back up following weekend for the Light of Shasta conference. Maybe you guys might want to try to come down for that if you're looking for a little good fun time at the Sacred Mountain. I love going to Shasta, man. There's so much going on there.
Oh yeah.
And then I'll be at the GSIC conference in Orlando, Florida in the third weekend of October with Alex Collier and Dr. Sala and Elena Denon and a lot of other great people. Dan Willis is going to make an appearance. He rarely comes to conferences, but we met at Shasta Summer Conference a year ago, and he's a great guy. So I love meeting people. I love talking to people. I've got a brand new presentation that I'm giving about all of the maps showing Antarctica centuries before it was discovered. with liner notes saying that they were source maps all the way back from the Library of Alexandria in the Piri-Reis map. And then I show around the world this polygonal and megalithic architecture that does appear that there was once a very high-tech antediluvian global civilization that existed on Earth. And the evidence left behind is this archaeological evidence above ground and below water. So I end it with underwater archaeology, which I think I'm going to put together in its own presentation and maybe give it the Gaia-sphere next year, like I gave this one for the first time last September. So, and books are cccpublishing.com. If you get my books through the website, then I can sign them for people. But I have all the other author book titles there as well. Leo Zagami, Jaco's first book, Lon Milo DeCat's Key to Solomon's Key, which got me into these esoteric subjects. Still a great book. I just finished author royalty statements, sent him a nice check for the last 6 months. Same with Leo. Because they're great books and people want to read them. They're evergreen, so they never go out of style or out of date. And yeah, I have a YouTube channel too, although I'm afraid to post on it because so many of my friends have lost their channel and I don't want to back it up, but it's CCC Publishing or Esoteric Series and my name, Brad Olsen, for the YouTube channel, and then my Facebook pages, which I finally got back after a hacker hijacked me for about 2 months, but figured it out. Wouldn't let that guy beat me. Wow. So you can follow me there too.
Right on.
Well, thanks so much, Brad.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, always a pleasure to talk with you. Can't believe a hour and a half went by so quick.
Yeah.
It's always quick.
Yeah, it always is. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for watching our interview with Brad Olsen, and we'll be back with him again. Take care, Brad. Stick around. All right. See you, everybody.